Here's how this works. All the money is going to come into the income account. And once it hits the income account, it's going to be automatically split up between these four accounts right here. So 70% is going to go to operating expenses, 10% to profit, 10% to owner's pay, and 10% to income tax. And let's talk about how I arrived at these percentages. First of all, operating expenses. I looked at my profit and loss statement. I went through it line by line. I looked at the totals and I realized that, I'm spending about 72% of every dollar we make on operating expenses. So I know that based on my own numbers of my own business, that around 70% is going to be safe. And that's really the best way to figure out what your numbers should be. You've got to look at how much you're spending. You've got to look at your expenses. So if you don't have a profit and loss statement, you don't have a balance sheet, you don't have a bookkeeper, and you don't know what's coming in and out of your accounts, now's a good time to get that done. Because this will hold you back until you learn it. It will prevent you from going beyond $1 million or $2 million a year until you really deeply understand your numbers. I know this because I was this person. I refused to dive into the numbers and learn it because I didn't want to, and it held me back. Now you might find that when you balance your books, you're spending 95% of everything you make on operating expenses. That's okay, I've been there, I know what that's like. So here's what you're gonna do. You're going to put operating expenses at 95%, you're gonna put profit at 1%, you're gonna put owner's pay at 1%, and you're gonna put income tax at 3%. And this might be where your percentages start. You might not be able to afford profits, owner's pay, and taxes. I wasn't able to. In fact, these are what my percentages looked like when I started because I was spending so much money. I didn't realize I was overspending. And I didn't want to shock the system by putting in profit first. I needed to taper down my spend slowly. But what happens next? It doesn't stay like this forever, does it? No, it doesn't. Every quarter, you're going to alter your percentages by 1%. So 4 times a year, it's going to change by 1%. And in a couple of years, you will be where you need to be. Now, you can get more aggressive with this if you can stomach it, but the minimum is at least 1% a quarter. So what's that look like? Well, next quarter, profit is going to become 2%, owner's pay is going to become 2%, and income tax is going to become 3%. So that's a total of 1, 2, 3 points. We're going to move it down, and now operating expenses is 92%. Great. After the next 3 months have passed, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to bump this one up to 3, we're going to bump this one up to 3, and we're going to bump this one up to 4. And then we're going to lower it by another 3 points, and that's going to now be 89%. And what we're trying to do is get to our target allocation percentage, or our TAP, which is the percentage that we ultimately want to arrive at. So for operating expenses, it's going to be 70. For profit, it's going to be 10. Owner's pay is 10, and income tax is 10. So we're going to keep adjusting our percentages until we hit this figure right here. So how many quarters is that going to take? 7 more quarters, or just under 2 years. And then our business will be able to make a 10% profit. You'll be able to take 10% of all the money you earn as pay, and you'll have 10% of everything you've earned set aside for taxes. It's pretty sweet, if you ask me. Now let's look at a real life example so you can see what happens when $50,000 hits an account that has percentages broken down like I've shown you. So what you're first going to see is $50,000 coming directly into our income account. Now remember, income gets 100% of the money, but then it needs to get split up. So you're going to see some of that split happening here. I want to show you an example of what it looks like to also set aside sales tax, so we're going to leave it in for this example. Okay, so this handles all the accounts but one, the operating expense account. Let's take a look at what happens there. You can see that we're transferring 65% of that $50,000 into OPEX, which is going to be a total of $32,500. But what's all this other stuff right here? Now is a great time to talk about budgeting. I've set aside some fairly strict budgeting rules so I don't overspend. So I've put a budget in place. If you don't have a budget in place, use mine as a baseline. It's a great place to start. First thing I want to talk about is marketing. 25% is all I'm allowed to spend on marketing. On inventory, 20%. Shipping, 15%. Payroll, 20%. Other stuff, 15%, and finally processing fees, 5%. These are some of the biggest expenses in your business. Therefore, I've made sure that I know exactly how much I can spend in each category. So what happens when $32,500 hits the account? How much money do I get to spend on each one of these categories? Well, I'm only allowed to spend up to $81.25 on marketing. These are Facebook ads, Google ads, influencers, videos, affiliate marketing, all this stuff. And then I have up to $16.25 for processing fees, Stripe, PayPal, Shopify, etc. Payroll goes towards any employees or contractors. This is not your pay. Your pay comes out of owner's pay, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Then we have cost of goods and inventory. This is money that you're allowed to spend to buy inventory. If you're not buying inventory every month and it's going to stay in this account, make sure you don't spend it, because without inventory converting into cash and coming back into our business will die. As far as shipping and packaging goes, I'm only allowed to spend up to $48.75, so I have to be very aware of how much I'm spending on shipping, how many pallets I'm moving back and forth, and how much I'm paying our 3PLs. And finally, we have other expenses. This is to cover any accidental overages, legal expenses, one-time fees, setup fees, tooling costs, or any other random expenses that pop up while you're doing business. Now, mind you, this is the maximum. I don't recommend spending the maximum every month. You need to spend less than the maximum every month. This is going to hold you accountable to your business. By having a budget in place like this, it prevents you from going into debt like I have. And if you go into too much debt, the interest can outpace the net profit of the business, and you can fall into a downward spiral and your business will die. We don't want that to happen. So we put budgets in place like this to hold us accountable. It costs a lot of money to run a business, and it's very easy to overspend. The more money your business can set aside, the more likely it is to survive. If you want a copy of this document, there's a link in the description for you. Let's go back to our business bank account so we can see what it actually looks like inside our Relay dashboard. Now remember, when we take a look at our auto transfer rule, we're transferring every day. We're keeping $2,000 in the income account, and then 70, 10, 10, 10 is going into the other accounts. Let's take a look and make sure that that's what happened. So when your profit first rule is in place, this is what's going to happen to your business bank account every single time you log in. Money's going to hit the income account just like this, and it's going to be split up internally between all of the accounts that you've outlined in your profit first rule. So if you look at your accounts, you'll see that the income account now only has $2,000 in it. That was our rule, right? Keep $2,000 in the income account. We've got 70% that went into OPEX. We've got 10% that went into owner's pay, 10% into profit, and 10% into taxes. And that's the basics of getting profit first set up. This is all you need to start. As you grow and as you learn it, you can add in some nuance or change the numbers, the percentages, or even the budget. But if you don't have a good place to start and you haven't quite figured out what your percentages are, use mine as a baseline. I've spent years figuring all of this stuff out and making it work. And I'm quite proud of our books, our accounting, and the way we operate profit first. After all, it did save my business. Now, lastly, chances are your bank account doesn't look like this. If your business bank won't allow you to do all the stuff that I've shown you here, you're gonna have a really hard time implementing profit first. Trust me, I tried with multiple different banks and I was unsuccessful with all of them. In fact, I almost gave up until I found Relay. They're the official Profit First bank. So if you're serious about this and you want to get set up just like me, click the link in the description and apply. And then watch this video next, because it will walk you through the exact steps you need to take to get set up just like